Peace and love, y'all. It's your brother A.D.V.I.S, and we back again with another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays. This is episode 7, y'all. So I'm going to give y'all time to come in, handle what we need to handle, and looking forward to seeing everyone and enjoying the show for today. Shout out to Christo for helping with the topic for today, which is a very important one, especially during these times right now. So, appreciate that. Thank you, Christo. Boom. And good to see you up in here, too. Right. Before we start, we're just going to go ahead and just play some stuff in the background until everyone shows up. So, feel free. We relaxing. We chilling for right now. Until we get a few more people come up in here, and then we'll get started with some stuff. When everybody comes in, tell me, how are y'all doing? What's the word? How are y'all feeling today? And they are here, live in effect. Yes, they are. So for before continue, today's topics that we're going to get in today is we're going over current events. A lot has been going in the past couple of days, so we got enough to talk about. Second, we're going to be talking about the educational gap, which they also noted and call it the achievement gap, as well as we're going to talk about the importance of research and gaining knowledge of self. Okay? So those are going to be the topics for today. It's going to be dope. All right. Give one more minute, or I say about 15 seconds. We'll start off with the show's inspired song, and then we'll get this running.
What's the word, y'all? What's the word? 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 What's the word, y'all? What's the word?
Alright, y'all. Welcome again. I am your brother A.D.V.I.S, and this is What's the Word Wednesdays, episode 7. And with all of that being said, let's get right into it. So, current events wise going on. There are a lot of headlines of things going on that's just already popping into my mind, as well as probably have ran across everyone's feed. If you have not seen in any way, shape, or form, I'll get to those in a bit. But first thing that I looked on the financial side. So if I'm correct, and y'all don't quote me on this, but I look up information here and there. But between the Senate and the House, there has been a bill passed for about $25 billion to the United States Postal Service, a little stimulus bill to help with the incoming, not only elections when it comes to getting out and everybody's mailer, votes out, but just in terms of reconstruction and support for the United States Postal Service. There are different things tied within that bill that was passed. I don't have all full details on it, but that's a bit there on the financial side, as well as the House. They have came back, or was forced to come back on a recess to re-sit down and talk about, once again, the unemployment extra, money and support still being lifted back up to that 600. But as of right now, the executive bill that was written by the president, or people say 45th, is right now we're looking at the allocation of 300 on top of whatever you make for unemployment. So, and that money is being used from FEMA, from what I'm hearing. So there's still talks of them getting all that stuff together, squared away, along with stimulus checks coming in, another wave of stimulus checks. So be on the lookout for all of that, y'all. Now, in other news that's been going on, one of the biggest things, which to me is still not surprising because it is an everyday situation, an everyday thing that's repeated constantly on the news, if not always, is sparking conversation around police brutality, defunding the police, and the apparent differences when it comes to the police and racial differences. So, if you haven't heard so already, just running through already, there's a man by the name of Jacob Blake, and if hopefully I got that right, Jacob Blake, who just a few days ago was caught in a situation with cops and was shot 7 times in his back while he was going to his car. I'm not going to say I know all of the full details here and there. I've seen a few of the videos cross through and cross over, but I've gotten to watch and see very blatant examples of other people, most likely, I will say, a lot of people who are particularly white. There are grand examples, and there's another one I will get on too, of how the cops had a very more likable case to say that they were in fear and harming themselves when a lot of other armed white Americans do come and either shoot out with the police, either blatantly go out and attack the police. But what ends up happening with those folks, if they are not, not fatally shot, but shot to a point where they can be stopped and detained, most of the time they are taken in and handled with very gentle care. But from all the other blatant examples that we have, whether it be from Tamir Rice, any others, Eric Gardner, Philando Castile, I can continue with the list, and now Jacob Blake, even Elijah, who the other guy, he was walking home too. But it just shows the big discrepancy and the very blatant idea of how you have racial bias, and it is perpetuated not only within the policing, but it's perpetuated within society, period. So this is always going to be an ongoing, continuing thing. But from that, to add on top of it, you have, within that same point, after that happened, riots broke out within Wisconsin. Specifically, it's in Kenosha, if I'm saying it right. It's Kenosha. Different protests and riots were breaking out, and you have a 17-year-old white individual, white boy from Illinois, make his way over here and decide to shoot. And right now, as of right now, 2 people are dead, which they did not disclose who, but For some people, they can infer who was killed, because if it was anybody else, a POC, person of color, black, they would have already either given that information and told us. So to use that inference, we can tell it's 2 white individuals that have passed away so far. But it's such a big duality, day and night reference of how he can walk with a gun and literally still be given some water and be able to walk freely without knowing the fact that he went and just killed. He went and killed, and he was shooting at people who were protesting injustice. But then you turn around and you have, cops that are supposed to be trained. The reason why I'm saying supposed to be trained is because we still have people who will still vouch for the fact that, well, this is definitely a hardening thing, and this is something for them when they are in that, adrenaline pumping, they don't know what's going on. I can get that. They're human at the end of the day. But still, that still gives you little right still to... Are we back? Go ahead and, shoot without any true premise of what's going on. Come to the scene, see that something's broken up, and you begin to already come drawn because of descriptions you heard. So, and you can even YouTube a lot of this stuff too, and you see the racial differences when it comes to policing. So I'm not gonna even go too much more further into it. But from a lot of the protests and things that are going on, for those who are into sports, as many of you know already now, that there are already a number of different teams that have sit out the game, decided to do their own protest, and there's no, at least, NBA playoffs for a few teams, as well as for a few baseball teams. I'm not going to say who don't, I mean, that's not my cup of tea, but it's all good. But it's very telling now, especially of the times, and you seeing how people are noticing, it's power in numbers, and that as much as we want to keep sweeping a lot of these issues and things under the rug and not giving any attention, it's not the time for that. 2020, once again, it is a blatant reference to Vision 2020. So a lot of things are being set and shown, and it's clear. So there is really no reason why you should say that you do not know, or you're not sure of what's going on. It's being played out right in front of your eyes as we speak right now. The revolution, in some ways, is being televised, but it starts in here. And it starts with building you, getting a community together, organizing, and increasing the power in numbers, and learning that division and conquering and dividing and all of that are all tactics. But besides all of that, the only other thing I do want to note when it comes to current events is there's also still the talk about the flood's still going on in China. A lot of the crops, I know I spoke about it before, but it's very well to know now that because of all of that going on within in China, which they're having their own situations and issues, not only with the crops, but with the way the government and thing is ran, that a lot of that is imported from there, our foods, our resources and things, and they're suffering some of the harshest, at least, food shortages that they haven't seen in a long while. Woo! So be aware of not only what's going on in the U.S., but also what's going on worldwide, because of also the virus, too, our global perspective and information is now freely open even furthermore. So keep an eye, ear, head to the world around you. As well as, I don't know much about this either. I'm just saying, also always do your research and look things up. But I've got to at least view a bit of a lot of Northern California fires are going on at this point right now, and they're having little at least relief when it comes to enough people helping to calm some of the flames. And a lot of them were brought on because of a lot of lightning storms. So those in Cali, don't be surprised if we start seeing rolling blackouts happening more frequently and a lot more going on, whether it's electricity wise or, you know, more natural, you know, disasters wise. So be on the lookout. If any of y'all have any current events that you know and see going on, please throw them in the comments. You know, you are always invited and welcomed to also come on live and speak on this stuff, because it is not only just me speaking to the screen, it is also me wanting to speak with you in person and really have this time for us to talk and, you know, build. But if you all have any in the comments, please feel free to drop them in there. But other than that, that's all at least I have when it comes to current events. There's probably so many more, but I know those were the few that were very out there and just hot news topic headlines already going on. So, next topic, which once again, shout out to Crystal. We are going to be getting into the educational gap, which a lot of the data that I got to look up and see too, it's also synonymous with the achievement gap. And this is a very important, as well as this is a pressing topic that is really needed to look at, and even in more depth of what we can speak on and talk about even on this show. But when it comes to the educational gap, there has always been a differences in not only resources for different cultures and groups of people, but certain resources that are available and given to different groups and individuals. And how that all ties into with the educational gap, it ties into not only how literate the kids in a lot of these communities are, but it also ties into the funding of how these community schools are provided with resources, as well as it shows the disparaging numbers when it comes to not only scores that are man-made by different companies for these schools to be taken, to also be used for other key indicators like school to prison pipeline, as well as the number of dropouts, effects on poverty, whether you'll receive and get a job, whether you'll be on public assistance, whether you'll be on food stamps, welfare, all of that all comes into play when it comes to education in this huge gap. So for this conversation and this talk, I did happen to do a bit of just Googling and finding a few things, and one of the surprising things I found is that right now, I mean, there's not too much, at least current data surfacing, which makes sense. I haven't seen any data, and it could be me just needing to do more research. I've only seen enough data that's for around 2017, 2018 numbers. So when it comes to this, I'm going to be referencing in between those, as well as there's between, honestly, 2010 until up to 2017. But when it comes to at least literacy, and this is overall within the U.S., so this is not necessarily everywhere, but this is just specifically in the U.S. when it comes to at least adult literacy. And it says there's approximately 32 million adults in America that are considered to be literate, and about 14% of the entire adult population cannot read. Take that in. And if you're wondering where I'm getting this information from, most of it is coming from the National Center for Educational Statistics, as well as I have one here with the nation's report card. So you can always go and look this information up yourself as well. Now, continuing again with at least the numbers when it comes to literacy. And the reason why I'm looking specifically at literacy when it comes to education gap, being able to read, write, and do math are very key skills that are needed. What's up, brother Fuse? Good to see you up in here. Welcome to What's the Word Wednesdays, episode 7, my G. Right now we tapping in about the educational gap, which is the achievement gap within the world, within the U.S. specifically. So tap in whenever you want, brother. I'm just throwing off some statistics. But now when it comes to, it says how many adults only read at the lowest proficiency. And it says roughly between 40 to 44 million adults, and that's about 23% in the U.S. have limited, almost either basic or below basic proficiency levels. And once again, the reason why I'm going back through this too is because it's very telling of a population when it comes to if they're able to, once again, read, write, and do math, and how much issues ensue because of that. And so much of the bigger gaps that come from the fact that if I can't read, how am I going to be able to do taxes? How am I going to be able to read contracts? How am I going to be able to read directions? It's just a lot of fundamental, that is a fundamental skill heavily needed, especially if you want to make it and continue through in this world, in this life. And we're only talking about, of course, reading when it comes to the English language, because of the fact the U.S. specifically English. Now, how many adults read at or above a 5th grade level, which I found this very interesting and very funny too, and I'll pair it of why I find it very not funny in the sense of like ha ha, like you shouldn't be doing that, but you'll see what I mean after. But they said basically somewhere around 30 million adults aren't able to comprehend texts that are appropriate for 10-year-olds. So roughly 30 million adults aren't able to comprehend texts that are appropriate for 10-year-olds. And this is within at least the U.S. Once again, we're not talking about the 7 billion that are all on 7 billion plus that are all around this world. We're talking specifically within the U.S. But the reason why I said that was pretty funny, and follow directions, true. Reason why I said I find that funny is because knowing a lot of us watch TV, you have different TV shows that come on. You have a lot of different game shows that come on. And I know I'm not the only one, especially in here, that remembers the show, Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader? And that's so crazy, the fact that they would have a show around the fact that Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader? Knowing the fact that we have at least 30 million adults that aren't able to comprehend and follow directions to an appropriate of text that has to deal with 10-year-olds. And we use the fact that those literacy levels are so low, and we turn it into comedic relief, as well as just wanting to, shame and put people out on you can't read. And that's so detrimental of telling people that they can't read and making fun of it, and you have a whole show of that, and you look and feel and think, get you thinking that you're stupid, when in fact it's not that. You just didn't have enough time to acquire the skills that's necessary needed to continue. Reasons why other countries look at us as idiots. Hey, Fuse, hey, you lit it right there, man, for sure. I mean, you go over, just for example, like you said, that we go over to different countries, specifically, I'll say, everybody knows, just, going over to France. And I mean, you see it on movies and things that say stereotypical, saying stupid Americans and all this other stuff. I can say from my experience being out there for a bit, I didn't have that come, in my particular path. But there is that, that sense of, especially if you have Americans walking around with, that complex of that they're better, we're the best country and things within the world, and not knowing to the fact that, shoot, when it comes to stuff like this, like education wise, we are definitely not performing as high as we know we should, at least when it comes to worldly wise. Yeah, I blame the screens. And that's another point we're gonna get into it, y'all. MC Zero in the building, y'all. Good to see you, brother. We talking about the educational gap, which they also noted as the achievement gap. But as we continue, all right, how many adults are able to read above an 8th grade level? So we have estimated 63 million adults read between the 6th and 8th grade level. And only 11% of men and 12% of women make the grade as proficient readers. Now take that in. 11% of men, 12% of women, proficient readers between 6th and 8th grade. So I'm just continuing down, and once again, you can look for this information. Like I said, you got the National Center for Educational Statistics, and they have many different reports that you're looking through. I'm reading this off of another article, but it links information from the this center. So if you wonder where I'm getting these numbers, that's where I'm getting it from. All right. Now, what percentage of high school students can't read? It says just under 20% of high school grads haven't developed basic reading proficiency by the time they don their cap and gown. Just under 20%. So the other roughly 80 to even more percentage at least can. But if they've also had previous issues when it comes to reading and sorts of that nature, what are we truly doing to help with set these kids up and only set up ourselves and our country for success? Where are we doing this? I know we had bills way back made, the No Child Left Behind, and so many different school bills made to help with fixing that educational gap, fixing that achievement gap. But by the way things are looking, especially when it still comes to literacy, and I'm looking only into literacy because that is a great indicator of whether kids are able to still also write and do math. If you're not able to read in your homework or do anything of that nature, how are you going to be able to do schoolwork? First thing you got to do is be able to read the directions or be able to know your letters A, B, C, D, E, F. So reason why I'm referencing once again literacy is because of that. Now let's see. I want to see one more to put here. And this is where we can talk about the whole idea to the concept of, you know, kids dropping out, as well as having higher percentages of being involved in crime or being put into jail. So he says, are challenged readers more likely to drop out of school? Kids who aren't successfully reading by a grade level by the 3rd grade are 4 times less likely to finish high school. So super early on, if they begin to start falling behind from, if you do preschool and you have kinder, TK, kinder, 2nd, 3rd, if they're not up to par by 3rd grade and are able to continue that, they are 4 times less likely to finish high school. And that's mad concerning. That's 3rd grade. That's super early. And because of that, are these reading skills and a lot of the kids not able to get to where they're at? Do these become indicators of criminal tendencies? And studies on here, it says studies suggest that 2/3 of students who struggle with reading by 4th grade will run into trouble with the law at some point. Once again, 2/3. It's 2/3. That's 66.6%? 2/3? Now that's concerning. And I mean, there's so much more it can end up going into. They have parts of how this can also affect the economy and the GDP of the U.S., as well as how much is it costing for us to continue to have different types of programs to help with addressing these educational gaps, especially with literacy. But this is all concerning because of the fact that, especially now, we're in the state of a pandemic. School has just started back, but a lot of it is online learning. And I didn't look up statistics about, attention spans. But knowing the fact that we have kids at home online learning, distance learning. Some kids, they're moving towards, of course, having them within schools part of the week or the strength, 2 days. Those are plans, at least within the LAUSD, from what I've heard, and that's going to be coming next semester. But you have kids at home that need to put in almost the hour's worth of a school day, and you expect them to be 100% focused and invested in their learning from there. And during this time right now, it will become very, very seen whenever they do, if they're able to do statistics or not. But you're going to see that educational gap, whether it's from different racial breakdowns, and you can look this up yourself. You're going to see a very big, complete drop when it comes to online learning, comes to reading rates, and a lot more kids feeling left behind because of the fact that not only the accountability of kids being able to still do their schoolwork, but how effectively they truly are gaining the knowledge and gaining what they need to move on to the next grade from this distance learning while keeping them engaged. That's becoming a very huge issue. But welcome to What's the Word Wednesdays. This is Crystal, y'all. Thank you for this topic today, too.
No worries. I got so much
Yes.
more. I just be thinking. Um,
Before we do, the brother put
um,
it in. He says, "Man, I feel that. As a parent, I'm worried about my daughter. It's not getting a good enough education from us, and because of that, she have a harder time in school as she gets older. She was supposed to start school this. I feel you, brother, and that's very valid. And this is the point where I know a lot of people are still scrambling around, figuring out, what are solutions and what are ways that we can continue this learning while at the same time minimizing the damage that's already been done and made due to the virus, and how much more that has also put pressure on parents, especially parents who at this point too are not even working, or if some are still working, it just adds to the stress levels, and some of them not even known for themselves, like I was saying earlier. A lot of them, not saying that they're not, but aren't necessarily well versed in the curriculum when it comes to Common Core, or well versed in the homework that the kids bring home and being able to validly teach them. It's like the parents are going to have to end up doing their own course to figure out how they're going to do that. But then once you have timing, you have food, you have these necessities, everything all pulled in, you feel like, where do I even start? How do I begin? And what can I even do?
I will say that I will say okay. There was a we're on the topic of like educational gaps. I grew up in a age gap household, right?
Yes.
So
Love that
I
destroyer.
I actually see the positivity in the online learning,
Yes.
and especially with the parents actually having time
Yes.
now. I actually see it as positive because how it was in my house, even though once I got to high school, it started like being rubble. But prior
Yes.
to like all my upbringing, elementary school, it was sit your butt down and do your homework. Sit your butt down. Can't get up until you finish this, and then I'm gonna check it, and I'm gonna
Yes.
go. And if it's wrong, unfortunately, the reality of that, it went a little farther to like if you get it
Yeah.
wrong, you get a whooping. But but like but it was that kind of like discipline that was instilled. It was that sit down and like have to focus. And
Yes.
if you focus, you have options, but your options are not going to be good. You can
Yes.
be punished, or you're going to sit and learn how to, sit with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
concentrate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that that's the best solution. I'm just saying it worked. Like it came with other, trade offs.
Yes.
you
No.
know,
And,
but it worked. You know what I mean? Because my parents didn't play that. And they looked at it as like we are giving you a better education than these systems.
yeah.
So you're going to end up being grateful. And it just took so many years, but I look back now and I'm like, yeah, I'm really grateful. I'm really really grateful.
Yes.
It's a challenge, it's a struggle, but you get there. It comes down to accountability, and not only
Yes.
for the child, because if we're talking about school children, there's plus and minus grades somehow. You understand because you're trying to figure out the world. You're trying what's going on. So there's a lot of things on their mind. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
mind is racing, going all these other places because they're just trying to get a grasp of what life is, right?
Yes.
So I would say during elementary years, it comes down to like the parent. It comes down to
Mm-hmm.
there being able to. I remember my mom used to make me read to her.
Mm.
Make me sit down and I would have to read to her like whole books.
Yeah.
And it would bother me so much because I wanted to do other things, but she was like, nope. When you finish this book, you can go do whatever you want. But
Yeah.
it does take accountability. You know what I mean on the parent, and that's why I think switching to online during this
Yes.
time has positive. It will have positive benefits if the parents are as invested.
Mm.
If they don't look at it as a burden, but look at it as a blessing,
Yes.
like sit down and help their kid And I remember, like, my dad is not really, he wasn't really that helpful in my education, but on the days that he was monitoring me during homework time, um, his response was figure it out.
Mm.
which
Yes.
which it was a challenge, but at the end of the day, did I figure it out? I figured it out. And we have that I understand, like, it should be a little bit, I don't know, I wouldn't say easier, but these kids have a little bit more of an advantage with Google
Yeah.
because we come from the AOL
Encyclopedia.
encyclopedia, then the AOL dial-up, and you know what I mean? Like, so we got the best of both worlds. We're lucky that now, we have Google to do things for us, but when we were growing up, we had to still go out and look. We had to do the Dewey Decimal System. Like, I
Yeah.
remember doing that. Like, remember thinking, when am I ever gonna need this? But I'm happy I know it because if I need to go to a library, and if that library is not all digital,
Yeah.
I know for what I'm looking for. So I think it's accountability on both ends. Like, younger
Hmm.
children, it weighs more on the adult. Um, when
Yes.
it gets like high school, it's got to be more of the got to be more of that, like, awakening. They've got to come to their own understand value
Yeah.
and where this is gonna take them. You
Yeah.
know. So I don't know. I look at this as a I'm hoping this because this weird time, this weird gap we're living in now, I can't. I'm sorry. I I have little patience.
I feel you. But I know I definitely thank you for sharing that perspective too, because it is not only just, of course, a dim darkness that this can be seen as. This is definitely also an advantage at the same time to really see and utilize what technology was really meant to do now.
Right.
Um, but it is very, once you like you said, it is the accountability on both parts. And realistically, for a lot of different families, especially those with low economic status and
Right.
having little to bit of resources, having to figure ways out and find things going on, and not having, of course, the mindset to really be there, be patiently sitting, and really working within, I'm just saying better term, in lack of better terms, working in the trenches with their kids to really figure these things out and to really guide them and show them, that, you can get through this. I'm gonna be here with you supporting, and just know that through this you're gonna continue to rise within, your educational thing. So we're gonna implement, you gotta do this at this time. Once you finish doing that here, maybe we'll have a bit more some reading so that you can practice your fluency, do some math times tables like around the house. What I mean, this is me talking about in grade, more so, lower grade, but then this can even still be applied to middle and high school depending on, the topic of what's needed.
Right.
But as much as I want to say that that is doable, I'm gonna have to be realistic and say at least a good majority of that is not as possible as we want it to be. And then in the because of, once again, the whole thing with the epidemic and things and stuff going on, even collaboration between communities, at least when it comes around with educating the youth,
Mm-hmm.
is also not much of a resource because of that fact. Because then you can have, one kid over here and their family and their parents have a great resource that works well for showing
Right.
their kids how to do it. And if they're not able to be able to, share that and give that information out, be able to pass that on, especially if they're having, of course, these issues with not being able to either access the internet or be able to get this out to people, or some cases can't go, to their place to share this information, you know, it continues to create part of the gap of where, of like, oh, this is where Jacob was at, but then, Sandra's not over here, and Terrell is still just on his phone because of the fact that that's the only way he can get to it. Um, But yeah, no, I'm still very optimistic because they've had the whole thing of being homeschooled, and you have a lot of kids who do come from homeschool that come out, very well. I'm not saying that it's not a viable thing. I mean, that's something I've thought about even in the future if I ever had kids or not, of doing some version of homeschool. But once again, it is the mindset, is the accountability, it's the discipline, it's the willingness to take on that responsibility to make sure that you're providing your kids with all the necessary tools to be successful during this time, even with a lot of the disadvantages. And we can speak about, of course, different community advantages, whether from local, economic status, to those that's higher up and have more, taxes to throw around to help with a lot more resources. But it also does come down to not only being able to do that, but also really ingrain it within also the kids. And when I mean that is, there's need a way to really incentivize that to the kids. Because right now, a lot of kids, if it doesn't catch their eye and doesn't catch their attention, and it's something that's very hard, they can lose focus very quickly. But there's a way that you're able to make it fun, make it digestible, as well as be able to set that expectation for them to know that you're going to have to do this, but I am here and willing to help and support you with this. That's where a lot of the life skills too that's going to go in to help click and put a lot of these missing gaps together. But yeah, overall, it's doable. Yes, is a good majority set up to be able to do so. Not from my understanding, no. And where does that really truly leave us at the end of it, at least right now?
I I don't know. This is like where I feel I feel so old in my soul because now I'm starting to grow. I'm
Yes.
starting to really see from my parents' perspective. And so when I hear providing incentives for the kids,
Oh yeah.
like automatically my mind goes like, no,
Yeah.
incentives. Like it goes back to that whole like saying like I'm not your friend, your parents say I'm not your friend. Like
Oh yeah.
incentives,
No. Oh yeah. No. I get you.
you need to do this, and you're gonna do this because either because like where do you want to be, or I'm not working this hard for
Mm-hmm.
you to just like sit around and slack off and watch TV. No, I'm not buying you that new tablet. No,
Yeah.
I'm not doing this. That's all of an incentive. Like really, I'm starting to see, and I understand that this new generation they're a little bit. I don't like to use the word softer, but
Yes.
they're just more emotionally sensitive. Is what I'll say.
Yes.
So you can't come at it from that approach without, hurting their feelings and then as a whole like thing.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, your parents know best. And if a
Yes.
parent is pushing and is really there saying like, you get the reward when I see results instead of like, let me try to bribe you. Because I hear incentive, I think like, I'm trying to bribe you.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Yes. Yes.
not,
Yes.
then you're not learning responsibility. You know what I mean?
You're just knowing that, oh, if I do this, I will get this prize at the end of it. Yes, I get you. I definitely get you. And this is where the reason why I put that out there is because if you haven't already set up that expectation or set up how things are done within a household, how do you begin then to create that link if you haven't done so already? And the reason why I say with the incentives, because I also really not much agree with giving incentives. I know how powerful they can be, but I know the long term effects of what happens if you keep incentifying kids to do things. It's going to get
Right.
to a point where the incentive needs to get larger and larger. If not, the motivation for whatever the activity to be done drops, and they say forget it.
And
So
then they
I
say
get that for sure.
that's the
But
thing.
how do you if you have not even created that link, how do you then go about doing that? And that's where I talk about incentivizing in a way of, okay, being how is there an effective way to use technology, use what they like, and be able to mold it into the fact that into learning. and for them to soon transfer over from, you know, extrinsic motivation, basically getting rewards for what they're doing, to intrinsic motivation where they're doing it because they want to do it and they want to acclaim to higher achievement and see that. I mean, there's still going to be points and times where, of course, you want to congratulate your kids. You want to give that love to them and be like, you did a great job, and that's how you're supposed to do that. I'm not saying that. I know you're not saying that is not the case either.
Right.
This is the point of where and how do we, if you haven't already done so already, create once again that link if there is no link at all. I'm not going to just tell a kid who literally at home when they get home, their mom or dad or whoever that is there, their caregiver that's there with them, literally they was like, oh yeah, I can't do my homework, and then literally they just go watch TV, and there's no accountability right there where it's like, wait, why are you watching TV right now? You should be doing your homework. But that has never been checked. So then when out of nowhere, after years, the caregiver decides like, no, you need to start doing your homework, sit here and do that, the kid is thrown off like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like every time I come home, you don't bug me about me not doing my homework, and I can go straight to the TV or straight to my tablet, straight to my phone, and be able to do what I can do. But now you get me on that? Why? What's going on? What's the change? So, as well as this is other point I did forget and I wanted to add, and then I want to at least tie in the last point too as well, since you're on here with me too.
Okay.
A lot of the parents, along with before being able they're hardworking, they're out there trying to, provide for their kids. A lot of the parents see school actually as daycare.
Yep.
So it's the responsibility of the school, the teachers, administrative, and staff to raise their kids. That's some of the parents. I'm not saying that's all parents. So now, since that responsibility, which is supposed to be your foundation, starts at home, but now that responsibility, because of the virus, has been thrown back on the parents. Now it's like, okay, now what am I doing? Where do I go? How am I? I wanted to make that point, but I'm gonna throw it to you, and then after that, let's knock on this last point, and we have about 6 minutes left to wrap up. But go ahead.
Oh, on this? Like, I don't know. I got the best. I got the best of both worlds. 'Cause
Huh?
I got the best of both worlds. Because not only was it like strict, when I got home at school time, like as soon as we got home, like pull out the book, finish the book, drink it, or whatever. But my parents also treat school like that too. That's why they put me in every single extracurricular activity. Oh, you want to take piano lessons? Oh, you want to do this? Oh, you're gonna do the after school program? Oh,
Yeah.
so that's what. But I don't think it's that old school mentality or something. But it was also balanced.
Yeah.
All right, home, you know what you got to do. I would try to get away from it. I was perfect.
Yeah.
It was constant. I understood, now they're responsible.
Mm.
And like, it's just educating to like, that's not what time. Like, that's just not good. Like, whether you think of it as daycare or not, it's daycare that's assignment. So it's going to put your kid at a level. Where do you
Mm-hmm.
okay with your kid being low? I remember I would get in trouble, bringing home low grades. What's
Yeah.
parent teacher conference? What's going on with her? And if it was something like, oh, she's daydreaming in class or she's sleeping in class, I used to sleep in class. She's sleeping in class.
Yeah.
I had it. You know what I mean? It was accountability. Uh, that's just my own feeling. It's so unfortunate that, if the parent isn't also adding that extra, like, discipline at home, it's unfortunate. And yeah, so you're making choices for your kid too. So not only is
Yeah.
there acting and to allow, but you're also making choice. You're the way for the kid as well. So
Yeah.
this is
On top of that, you have kids learning from the parents. That's where it's the observational learning. So the kids learn the behaviors and what they do and how they approach things from their parents. So if the parent really doesn't care too much about school, but still stresses it, but shows in behavior wise that they don't, then why is the kid gonna care about school? But on top of that, getting into the last topic because it ties so well into this part two here is then what is the importance of research and really knowing knowledge of yourself? Because as we know, when it comes to this educational system that is set up within the U.S., specifically within the U.S., I can't speak for other countries outside of, but we know it is very European centric, and all of the coursework and where it is set and done, and there's little to no sprinkles of history or ethnocentricity within school curriculum when it comes to learning. And a lot of the history that is written, it is written really more so to highlight the achievements and the upbringings of just white individuals. And it leaves other communities out, only looking at more so negative aspects of their history, which that also sets up a mental block to be like, well, dang, this is all I was within history. There was nothing else to this. So I didn't contribute anything within history. So why am I learning history? This is not important to me. I know for me personally, that's why I was never a fan of history, is because I'm like, where does this really apply? Besides, of course, I mean, I'm in America. This is American history. Right. Yes. But none of these white dudes is appealing to me. I get it. Our forefather, all this other information. And it does not surprise me of the fact of why there's so many different disparities because of how things are set up. Everyone is taught the same thing. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be taught the same thing. You're supposed to be, know the basics of anything, reading, writing, math. We get it. A lot of that stuff is universal. But tailoring it to the historical and cultural impacts for that particular individual and particular kid. And the reason why I say that is because when you're able to build that foundation of knowledge of self, of your community, of your culture, of all that you encompass, your perspective widens so much to the point that you're able to ingest all information and know that a lot of information in history that was written and then was rewritten out of history for you not to know was a really big part to create the whole history of what we are as humans. And the reason why you want to do that research is because of the fact that if you look in some of these books, especially in teaching materials, I know way back when, a lot of their information is riddled with falsehoods, as well as is half true and half right, or not half true but false. Yeah. And that also sets up a complete barrier for the whole truth of what education is supposed to do, which the word breaks down to E.D.V.I.S, and E.D.V.I.S means to bring forth and bring out, and to bring out that love for wanting to learn and research. So if we're just cookie cuttering and feeding what we have and known to kids, and they're not interested and don't want to get into it, and they don't see themselves within that history and know, they're going to be like, then why I need to learn about stuff? I'm going to learn about, how I can get these skins in Fortnite. I'm going to learn about how I can do the new TikTok dance. I'm going to learn a lot of other social cues and things outside of truly knowing, like, if I know about my history, my people, myself, and how to move about in this world, I'll set up and be a lot more confident within myself. We got a minute. Get you what you got. We got a minute.
It has you feeling left out when you
yes
when you can't see yourself in there. So that's why you're gonna gravitate to what's happening now, what's happening in the present, so that you see yourself and you feel attached and part of this world. Because and you can't see yourself there, or you feel lesser than over the
yeah.
you're only 3/4 of a human,
Yes.
or my only history is police, things like that. You start to feel left out, you start to
Yes.
feel valued, and then you lose the value in yourself because you don't know where you are.
Very true. And with that, y'all, we're gonna have more. But thank y'all for being here. This has been an episode of What's the Word Wednesdays, episode 7. Thank y'all so much. Peace and love. Me brother A.D.V.I.S. We are out.